Chapter 1. A Shadow Among Skyscrapers. Anna's Return. Anna Richardson stepped off the train onto the Seattle platform early in the morning, just as the city was waking up beneath a steady fall drizzle. She'd never truly felt like she belonged here, even though she'd grown up among these glass towers and bustling avenues where the Richardson name once carried weight. The chilly wind off Puget Sound seemed intent on blowing away everything from her past and everything that lay ahead. Anna hadn't brought anything extra with her, just a gym bag, her laptop, and a folder of blueprints that had long become both her weapon and her shield. Behind her trailed a failed marriage, a carousel of career changes, and years spent trying to prove to herself that a person's value was in their actions, not their surname. The family had written her off years ago, a perpetual loser, an idealist with no future, the eldest daughter who never achieved anything. The journey home felt like a road back in time. The gray walls of the old apartment complex, built by her great-grandfather, were plastered with ads. The windows looked dull, and in the courtyard, the new glass towers of competitors loomed over everything. But within these walls lived her childhood memories, and the family legend her father, Henry, recited at every dinner, that this very building was the heart of their family pride and the hope for their future. The family was gathering here for the first time in 5 years. Henry, having just turned 68, had decided to hold an heirs council, a traditional contest to select the best candidate to inherit the family's crown jewel. Anna understood. To everyone else, she was just a formality, a footnote in the family history. Caroline, her younger sister, dazzled with success. 3 kids, a prestigious job in luxury real estate, a husband, Robert, with a small but stable business, a perfect house, and a perfect smile in every family photo. It was clear from the start who the favorite was. Caroline, with her flawless hair and gifts for everyone, was already making plans to turn the family apartment complex into a luxury condo hotel. Robert smiled and handed out business cards. Everyone knew his company survived on credit, but in this house, those topics were taboo. Anna, on the other hand, tried to stay in the background. Her place was by the window, listening as her father boasted about the past. Caroline mapped out success plans, and the others took turns listing their achievements and city hall connections. They looked at Anna like old furniture, present but neither useful nor decorative. When night fell outside, the first inspection began. Her father insisted on walking the building's floors to feel the legacy. Old boards creaked underfoot. The halls smelled of the past. Her father retold stories of the golden years, while Caroline snapped photos of the facade for her future ad campaign. Anna noticed how neighbors, longtime tenants, nodded at her. Some smiled warmly, some gave subtle signs of thanks. In that moment, she realized that all her loser status existed only in the family's eyes, not the city's. Over the past year, she'd met every tenant, listened to their complaints, pored over manager reports, held meetings with contractors and lawyers, all to keep the complex alive, to prevent it from being broken up and the residents thrown out. But no one knew this. To the family, she was still just the failed eldest daughter. At the family dinner that evening, the conversation again turned to global success. Henry spoke of skyscraper construction in the 80s. Caroline reminisced about million-dollar deals. Robert hinted at new investments. Anna listened in silence. All attention was on the others. Yet behind the facade, tension simmered. Everyone waited for the moment to claim their share, to secure their standing. Anna watched the farce with a mix of sadness and sarcasm. While others squabbled over the future, she had already spent a year, step by step, saving the building from bankruptcy, without fanfare, without letting anyone know her role. The city lights shone through the windows. Seattle lived its own life, and only Anna knew that the most important decision that night would not be made at the family council, but much earlier, in the folder of documents resting quietly in her room, unwanted by anyone. That's how her return began, in a house where everyone was sure she'd lost, and where no one had the slightest idea who was truly keeping that home afloat. Chapter 2. The Family Council. Battle for the Legacy. At the Richardson house, the morning of the family council was always a special ritual, practically a stage production in its own right. Henry, the family patriarch, had drafted a formal agenda in advance, spread antique documents under glass on the dining table, and with all the drama he could muster, summoned everyone to the most important gathering in a decade. Caroline was the first to arrive, in a perfectly pressed suit with a thick folder of presentations and the unflinching face of someone who'd already won. Her husband Robert lugged in a laptop and a stack of papers stamped with his company's logo, ready to pitch an investment strategy. Unlike the others, Anna showed up without the fanfare. Just a simple business-like outfit, a couple of notes in a well-worn notepad, and a gaze hardened by a year of battles most of her family could never imagine. She took a seat near the exit, easier to observe the spectacle and avoid the spotlight when the family inevitably turned the talk to real prospects. From the opening minutes, the council turned into a contest of ambitions. Caroline laid out her vision for revitalizing the complex, complete with trendy boutiques, luxury penthouses, and a rooftop fitness center. Robert launched into his pitch about how his firm was the only reliable contractor capable of pulling off such a project, skipping the little detail that his last several jobs ended in lawsuits and mounting debt. Henry basked in the praise from his offspring, making notes and quietly chuckling at their strategies. Anna's role in this atmosphere was more neutral observer, or maybe a convenient punchline. Caroline made sure to point out that urban planners barely make peanuts, and that real money is in business, not in public projects. Robert offered a sly grin. "Anna, you got anything to share? Or just another landscaping plan for the courtyard?" Even their father couldn't resist a little dig. "Those are some noble ideas for this kind of money, daughter." Behind her calm exterior, Anna seethed. She remembered the late-night calls from property managers, the frantic attempts to keep creditors from shuttering the building, the delicate negotiations with lawyers and city officials. Just a year ago, the building was on the brink of bankruptcy, right when Anna, through a trusted attorney, had set up a trust and quietly bought a controlling stake, hiding her involvement behind a string of companies. It was those moves, and those alone, that kept the complex in the family's hands, though none of them had the faintest clue that all their presentations and strategies were nothing more than the illusion of control. The council quickly descended into finger-pointing and backroom maneuvering. Caroline insisted that only a modern approach and fresh capital could save their legacy. Robert demanded an immediate audit to see where all the rental income was really going. Anna watched as her sister and brother-in-law clashed, jockeying for position and power, while their father struggled to project unity, insisting family comes first. But the mood in the room kept growing more tense. Voices rose, accusations flew, and nobody wanted to hear anyone else's ideas. Anna caught looks of doubt, Caroline's sarcastic tone, Robert's smirking jabs, and, in her father's eyes, the subtle fear whenever debts and prospects were mentioned. To everyone else, Anna's place was in the family's rear-view mirror. The real fight was only between the winners. At one point, Caroline suggested they vote to transfer control of the complex to the most effective family member. Robert was instantly on board. Their alliance was rock solid. Their father wavered but was clearly leaning toward the majority. It's time for new blood, not old idealists. Anna listened as if it was all about someone else, but every word cut. She alone knew what it had cost to keep the building afloat, but to everyone else, she was still the loser and the idealist. When the council ended, Caroline left first, all victorious smiles. Robert whispered something to Henry and shot Anna a wink. The room emptied out, leaving nothing but silence and a bitter aftertaste. The Richardson name was no longer a bond, just a knot of personal ambitions and old grudges. Anna stepped out into the damp Seattle air and finally allowed herself to exhale. She knew the real battle was only just beginning, and the sharpest blows were still to come. For now, nobody suspected that the real control over the legacy was already firmly in the hands of the loser they'd all worked so hard to write off. Chapter 3. Masquerade at the Banquet, Contempt and Schemes. That evening, the Richardson home was steeped in a kind of showy grandeur, a banquet thrown to commemorate the anniversary of the family complex's founding. The whole affair was little more than a parade of vanity, sparkling glasses, Henry's ritual speech with the usual, "We are building the future," and a hall packed with anyone even remotely connected to the Richardson name. Showing up for this celebration of family unity was non-negotiable, a mandatory rite where every detail, from monogram napkins to the precise arrangement of flowers, served one purpose: to underscore the so-called greatness of the dynasty. Anna, as usual, hovered on the periphery. She'd chosen a modest dress, uninterested in flash or approval. Her arrival drew neither admiring glances nor envy. The neighbors nodded politely. Distant relatives barely acknowledged her. But the real spotlight fell on Caroline and Robert. Caroline sparkled. Her dress, her jewelry, her poise all screamed status, confidence, and power. Robert regaled the crowd with stories of yet another big deal, exaggerating his wins at every turn. The guests pretended to be impressed, but most already knew the truth about his debts and failed ventures. As some flaunted their success, others tried to cling to it by any means. Younger cousins flitted around the room, refilling champagne for the influential guests, hoping for a nod of approval. A distant aunt loudly criticized the decline of morals among the young, while quietly negotiating a new will with a lawyer in the corner. The banquet was no simple celebration. It was a marketplace of ego, where everyone vied for their slice of the family pie. Henry gave his traditional speech, extolling family values, but kept casting meaningful glances at Caroline, not so much in approval, but as if he was waiting for her to step up and lead the next generation. When the talk shifted to inheritance, he stressed that a time of change has come, hinting that the baton must be passed to those who have proven themselves effective. While Henry spoke, Caroline soaked up approving glances from relatives. Anna noticed how her sister purposefully ignored her, almost afraid to even make fleeting eye contact. Robert, unable to resist the tension, made a joke about adding Anna's name to the Hall of Fame for contributions to urban greening, which earned a round of laughter from the clique around him. Anna gave no response. She knew exactly what those jokes were worth. Meanwhile, at the banquet table, the debate over the complex's future raged on. Caroline and Robert hammered home their point that those who don't make money have no right to manage the legacy. Younger members of the family discussed their own business projects, sneering at anyone who'd chosen a quieter life. Some openly wondered why Anna was even there. After all, she's accomplished nothing, just squanders the family's money on her urban fantasies. As the evening wore on, side conversations heated up. Caroline gathered supporters, plotting how to convince father to officially hand her signing authority over the key accounts. Robert whispered about new investors, supposedly ready to back the project, though in reality, it was just a cover for his own mounting debts. Distant relatives, sensing the growing battle, did their best to stay out of the crossfire, not wanting to bet on the wrong side. All this time, Anna remained an outside observer, though inside she simmered with a blend of anger and exhaustion. She watched how quickly people changed masks. A moment ago, a friendly cousin was now scheming with Caroline for a job for her son, while an uncle quietly advised Anna to be more assertive if she wanted to get anything from the night. They despised her for her humility, for not playing their games, for not chasing after quick fame and money. The climax of the evening was Caroline's toast. She raised her glass and declared with pride that the future of the complex depends on decisive people, not dreamers, and, to a round of applause, gave Anna a pointed look, publicly erasing her from the ranks of the heirs. Most of the guests sided with Caroline, convinced the matter was settled and the fight over, but Anna, watching the farce unfold, felt only a growing resolve. She knew that, in this family, success and power were measured not by values, but by surface gloss. The banquet was a stage for contempt and scheming, with everyone certain they knew who'd already won. Yet no one realized that, right there in the shadows, a real revolution was quietly taking shape. Chapter 4. The Reveal, Cards on the Table. The morning after the banquet, Henry's house was wrapped in an uneasy quiet, but beneath that stillness, tension brewed like a thunderstorm ready to break. The family was gathering for the family council, the formal meeting where, as everyone expected, the future owner of the complex would be announced and the transfer documents signed. Caroline had put on her most striking dress, and since early morning had been psyching herself up for victory, rehearsing her speech in the mirror and reminding Robert not to interrupt, just confirm everything. The younger family members were preparing their brief endorsements of the dynastic solution. Even Henry looked nervous, carefully choosing the words for his ceremonial announcement. Anna arrived a little later than the rest. She could feel the eyes on her, a mixture of condescension and wariness, as if everyone agreed this was her final act in this theater. Henry opened the meeting with a lengthy speech about tradition, honor, and the importance of the family complex, not hiding his expectations as he declared it was time to pass management to whoever can take the family asset to the next level. Every gaze turned to Caroline. Her voice rang out confidently. She spoke of new connections, attracted investments, and strategic leadership. When it came time for the vote, Caroline nominated herself as the new manager. Robert, grinning with satisfaction, was the first to support his wife. The rest of the family, eager for a reward for their loyalty, nodded along. Anna listened in silence. She knew. Now was not the time to object. Everyone was still too sure of their own superiority. But when Caroline raised her glass to proclaim her victory, Anna quietly placed her neatly organized briefcase on the table. Calmly, she pulled out a folder of documents and with chilly politeness handed it to her father and the family's lawyer. Henry frowned. Nothing in this house ever went forward without his approval. The lawyer opened the folder and began reading. At first, confusion reigned in the room. For him were documents about a trust, managing the complex, payment records for the year, and minutes from meetings of some management company. As he read, the lawyer's expression shifted, first wary, then surprised, and finally openly shocked. Henry, irritated, demanded an explanation. With a trembling voice, the lawyer began to read aloud. The controlling stake in the complex has, for the past year, belonged to a company whose beneficiary is Anna Richardson, acting through a trust. A dead silence filled the room. Caroline clutched the table, Robert sat frozen, mouth agape, and the rest of the relatives exchanged glances, unable to believe what was happening. Henry, stunned, tried to process how this could have happened. After all decisions went through the council. Anna explained calmly, the trust had been set up during a crisis to save the complex from bankruptcy. She had informed the lawyer at the time, and the ownership documents had been sitting all this time in the family's own folder, which no one bothered to read. They'd been too busy plotting and fighting for their shares. The mood in the room shifted instantly. Caroline tried to object, accusing Anna of scheming behind the family's back, but the paperwork was impeccable. A legal trust, bank consent, full records of all meetings. Robert muttered something about moral rights, but quickly fell silent when it became clear he had no legal standing. The younger relatives started whispering, already seeing Caroline less and less as the future mistress of the house. Father bowed his head. His voice, for the first time, was lost. "You could have told us," Anna answered firmly. "I saved what you'd already written off as lost." She didn't hide her resentment, but didn't address anyone directly. Her words were for all those who'd forgotten what it meant to take responsibility for the common good, not just their personal ambitions. In that moment, the atmosphere in the house changed. Masks were ripped away, and everyone saw the true balance of power. Some relatives rushed to support Anna, hoping to preserve their own influence, but most were left confused, uncertain how to behave around someone they'd always dismissed as weak, but who turned out to be the sharpest and strongest of them all. The reveal changed not only the outcome of the family council, but the whole dynamic of the family itself. Now the air was stripped of its gloss. Only cold honesty remained, and for everyone in that house, it was clear. The era when power was decided by loud voices and dazzling clothes was over. Chapter 5: The Price of Pride, a Coup at the Family Council. The morning after the big reveal felt like the calm before the storm. The family council, once a mere formality for Henry and Caroline to display their authority, had become an arena for desperate attempts to preserve the status quo. The whole house, filled with antique furniture, sounded different. Every step echoed with anxiety and uncertainty. Anna was up before anyone else. She understood. The responsibility now lay with her, not just for the complex, but for the family's reaction. Over the past year, she had learned to keep her emotions hidden. But this morning's coffee went down hard. The familiar cityscape outside the window seemed alien, and so did these walls, where decisions once felt eternal. Today, those walls would witness the moment the past gave way to something new. The meeting began without the usual pomp. Henry tried to reassert control, but his voice no longer carried authority. He glanced around the room as if for the first time he saw just how divided the family was. Caroline, for the first time, wasn't smiling. Her trademark confidence had given way to aggression, but even her anger looked more like fear. Anna presented her position calmly. She did not accuse or seek revenge. She simply laid out the facts. How a year ago the complex was on the verge of bankruptcy. How she had, through the trust and a complicated web of companies, bought up the shares to keep the building from going to the creditors. How she had overseen the restoration, secured new tenants, and turned the property profitable. Dry numbers spoke louder than any reproach. No one in the family even knew the real state of affairs. Robert tried to accuse Anna of secret machinations, but quickly went silent. All the documents were in order, every step coordinated with the banks, and not one of Caroline's advisors had even bothered to read the financial reports from the past year. The younger relatives started to shift sides. Just yesterday, they backed Caroline, and now they were quick to acknowledge Anna's contribution. Henry made a last-ditch attempt to play the family unity card, urging everyone to put aside grievances for the sake of a common future. But the word unity rang hollow. Anna reminded them, a real family isn't about splitting profits, but about taking responsibility for the common cause, even when it doesn't bring approval. Caroline could not take it any longer. For the first time in years, she lost her composure, accusing Anna of betrayal, of making everyone look like fools, of killing faith in the family. But her outburst sounded pitiful. Behind the beautiful words lay years of ignoring real problems, pride, and blindness. Silence settled over the room. For many, it was humiliating. It turned out the outsider hadn't just survived the tough situation, she had saved everything they'd been so proud of. The family had no choice but to admit it. Their pride had been their greatest mistake. But the meeting didn't end there. Unexpectedly, the younger relatives proposed a new initiative to create a family fund supporting young urbanists, determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Anna was invited to chair the new fund. For some, it was a way to save face. For others, the first step toward recognizing genuine values. Henry slowly approached Anna, looking her in the eye for the first time in years. He quietly spoke the words she might have been waiting for her entire life. "I was wrong." There were no tears, no embraces, just a respectful pause. Everything had changed. For the first time in years, the family council did not end with a banquet. Everyone went to their own rooms, thinking not about wealth, but about the price of pride. There was a sense in the air of an era ending and a new chapter beginning, where slogans meant nothing unless backed by action. For Anna, this was not a triumph or a victory, it was, more than anything, liberation. She could finally be herself, with nothing left to prove to anyone. Chapter 6: A New Name, Stronger Than Revenge. Several months had passed since the family council was forced to admit the era of old rules was over. Seattle still greeted the sunrise with its glass and concrete, but for Anna, the city had become something else. Not an arena where she needed to hide, but a home she had helped to save and reshape. She no longer felt like a shadow among skyscrapers. On the contrary, now her name was displayed in bold letters on the facade of the renovated complex, Richardson Community Hub. That day, for the first time, Anna allowed herself to smile, not just to herself, but openly. The time for hiding was over. Now she had something to say to the world. Anna poured all her energy into the project. She transformed the building both inside and out, opening social spaces, free workshops for urbanist students and young people from disadvantaged neighborhoods, launching programs for affordable housing and eco-friendly technologies. Within a few months, Richardson Community Hub became a model for other neighborhoods in the city. Delegations from different cities came to learn, and industry media wrote that Seattle is once again becoming a laboratory for urban dreams. But for Anna, the main thing wasn't recognition, it was the results. Hundreds of people found not just new homes, but opportunities and hope. Her family observed her success in their own ways. Caroline, after weeks of public silence, tried to reclaim her influence, but quickly realized that her old methods no longer worked. More and more often, her clients asked if she was related to the Anna Richardson. And one day, Caroline came to the hub, not as a winner, but to ask her sister for advice. Robert, after a failed attempt to join the new investors, started restructuring his business. And though not everything went smoothly for the first time, he began running it honestly, perhaps for the first time in his entire career. The most surprising change was in Henry. The old tycoon, used to power and control, now came to meet with Anna. Not to give advice or criticism, but to learn from his daughter to see the city not through the lens of profit, but as a living organism. They attended city hearings together, advocated for social renovation projects, and for Henry, this became the best way to make up for lost time, not only in business, but in his relationship with his daughter. Anna herself was transformed. If before she only spoke when asked, now her voice was heard at every major city development forum. She was invited to round tables. She spoke to students, telling them how not to give up, even when the world insists you'll never succeed. Her story became a symbol, not of revenge, but of inner strength, able to change not just the fate of a single family, but the life of an entire city. Still, despite her victories, Anna never forgot how it all began. On the first anniversary of the renaming of the complex, she led a tour for school children from neighborhoods long ignored by city planners. When a boy asked if it was scary to stand against her whole family, Anna answered honestly, yes, it was scary, but it was scarier to live your whole life by someone else's expectations. Stronger than revenge, she said, is being honest with yourself and doing what you believe is right, even when it feels like no one will understand. That evening, as Seattle was bathed in the gold of sunset, Anna lingered by the window of her family complex. Life was buzzing outside the glass, someone rushing home, someone staying late in creative workshops. She was no longer a loser in her family's eyes, but someone who had restored a lost name, not for the sake of a family crest, but for people. The new name on the facade now meant much more than just a surname. It was a symbol of a new chapter, for Anna, for the city, and for the family that had finally understood. True value lies in creation, not in possession. This victory required no loud triumphs. Its essence was in the quiet, in the peace that comes when you no longer have to prove anything to anyone. Because stronger than any revenge is being yourself and not being afraid to build anew, even if all you have left is ruins.